Hello and welcome back to another episode of the All For One podcast. It's been a while since we've done one of these, but the world is still in a pretty similar situation. More businesses and gyms and things like that are open, but we are still in sort of a lockdown. Coronavirus is still here and it's still affecting lots and lots of people. So what we're going to try and do is take our minds off that entirely and think about an incredible fitness challenge which today's guest is going to be, I'm not going to say going on, I'm going to say putting themselves through, because it doesn't sound like anything that I'd want to do on a Sunday morning. But we're joined today by Jack Anderson, a personal trainer from my city, Bristol. Jack, welcome to the show. Good to have you here.
Hello, thanks for having me.
So we were both diagnosed in 2015, the same year. You were 15, I was 23. But what was the sort of situation back in 2015? You were obviously, a teenager in your mid-teens. You find out you have type 1 diabetes. How does that all happen?
So it happened over Christmas 2015. So I think I was just progressively getting a little bit ill. Thought it was sort of a common winter's cold. Mum obviously noticed some of the symptoms before I had. I had no idea what diabetes was or what it was going to sort of essentially come into my life and be. So yeah, Mum noticed that I was unwell, noticed all the symptoms, was like, right, we're going to need to get you checked out. Went and had all the tests and they were like, it's diabetes. And I was like, right, there we go. And then that was it. And then it was just, right, how do we deal with this? First of all, what is it?
It's quite a tough time in your life because obviously, teenage years are rough years, or can be, without a lifelong health condition. But I seem to remember from talking to you previously that you maybe didn't take to it, that easily to begin with. You were sort of avoiding carbs for a while, weren't you?
Yeah. For the first year and a half, I'd say. So I was in massive denial at the start. I was sort of always that sporty kid at school. I was always doing the most. I just got into gym training and I was like, right, this is where my fitness journey has started. And it's already just had diabetes sort of thrown as the first obstacle in the way. And it was just a massive, I can't believe that this has happened to me. And it was sort of everything I was taught about diabetes in school was that it was because I was really unhealthy. And I was like, but I'm so healthy. I was like, why has this happened to me? And yeah, I didn't want to believe that I had it. I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to manage it. And then in turn, it ended up sort of managing me, and it was really getting in the way of my life. And I hated injecting, so I just would not eat any carbs, which actually ended up making me quite ill. But yeah, it's only over the last couple of years.
The keto life not suit your body then?
The keto life is not for Jack PT UK. No way.
So it does, I'm really grateful, to be honest, that I was diagnosed when I considered myself to be, a relatively fully formed adult, and I'd done university, I'd done college, that stuff was all done and gone. I didn't have to deal with it then. So I can't imagine what it must have been like. But what was the sort of time scale when you sort of learning to deal with it and ultimately accepting the fact that you've got diabetes and it's just going to be part of this journey that you're on?
Yeah, so really it was when I first had it, I was obviously taught how to manage it, and I was like, right, I know what I've got to do. It was just more the little things, and especially when you're sort of at 15, you're at that difficult age where you're starting to want to stay out a little bit later. You're going to want to sneak off to house parties. You're not going to want to tell mum where you're going. It's stuff like that. That's where it became quite difficult, because it wasn't like I was sort of at an age now where I think I'm a little bit more mature than what I was when I was 15. I was obviously sort of in that phase where I just wanted to be independent. I wanted to go out and do my own thing. I didn't want to have to worry about diabetes. It was when I sort of first felt like I was able to sort of go out from home a little bit more. And I just found that I didn't want to have to deal with it because the idea of it stressed me out. So I just didn't. And then it's only really since I've been a PT and a little bit before, when I would take care of my diabetes, I'd feel better. And I was like, well, if controlling my diabetes means that I feel better, then why the hell have I not been controlling it? Because now that I do control it, everything has just gone 100 times better. And although it is a faff and it is a pain in the backside having to do all the tests, having to take all the injections, when you manage a condition in the way how it's supposed to be, you're then no longer ruled by it and limited by it.
Yeah, and it also, what I just have learned over maybe the past couple of years is that exercise is just, for me, it's the key to just making everything sort of as easy to manage as possible.
Yeah, 100%.
And I'm in a bit of a weird
a
bit of weird situation now where, you know, I'm still like, you know, in complete lockdown mode. Like I'm wearing a hoodie today because I just don't feel right wearing anything other than sweats. I started lockdown exercising all the time, but, you know, after a few sort of things have happened, that's all sort of melted away, and I'm noticing the sort of difference in how my condition is as opposed to when I was exercising. So I mean, it's just more proof to me that you know, exercise just got to be a regular part of my life, whether I like it or not. And it's for me, it's the consistency, because it's so easy to do it the day after you did it before, but the day after you didn't do it before is like the hardest thing in the world for me.
Yeah. So it's sort of like the benefits of exercise, like, are just they're massive. You know, like, exercise benefits everybody. But as somebody who's diabetic, I can actually tell you something quite interesting in a minute. But as someone that is diabetic, you can essentially you increase your insulin sensitivity by exercise. So it essentially means that you have to take less medication to control your diabetes if you exercise more. So to relate this into what I'm doing, I went on a 3-hour bike ride a couple of weeks ago, and over the course of 3 hours, I consumed 260 grams of carbs with not 1 unit of insulin. And my levels went from 10 at the very start of the ride to 4.8.
Wow. Well, the next time I want a Chinese, I just go on a 3-hour bike ride.
Yeah, so you'll vouch for this, right? That if you were to eat 260 grams of carbs with no insulin, it would probably put you into ketoacidosis.
100%.
And you would be pretty unwell. you'd be hospitalized. So that just sort of shows the power of exercise when managing conditions like diabetes.
And even if it's more like the sort of residual effect. So there's so many knock-on effects, and I'm only sort of really learning them now after sort of, you know, before lockdown, I was doing in the gym, doing classes like 4 times a week. Still sort of kept them up whilst I've been at home, but now sort of the gym's back. There are fewer and fewer sort of online classes to the place where I used to go to. So it's just not been, you know, like a thing. I even picked up running for a while, but I just hate running. Anyway, what I'm getting to is the fact that you're taking less insulin means that you aren't sort of riding that roller coaster, because that's what I'm doing now. Is because, you know, I'm sitting down, I'm at my computer a lot of the time, so the insulin isn't active. I'm not very insulin sensitive, so it's going up, and I see it going up, and I take more insulin. That means it's going down, so I'm hyper and hypo so many times, and the only time that I wake up with a nice flat line is when I've drank too much the night before. And to me, that's it's lockdown. This point of lockdown is a very unhealthy point of lockdown, and I'm hoping the chat with you today is going to help me sort of break through that and get me back in the exercise swing of things. But I mean, we've not actually said what you're doing yet, but you are taking on an Iron Man challenge, which I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's a cycle, ride, a swim, and a run. Yeah, so what are the distances?
So it's a 3.8 kilometer swim, which is 2.5 miles. It is then a 180 kilometer bike, which is 112 miles, and then a full marathon, so 44 kilometers, 26 miles.
And you're properly going for this, aren't you, in terms of your training?
Yeah.
And so are you going for a time, or are you just sort of training to complete it?
So I'm actually going for sort of like 2 things on the same day. So to sort of reveal the other side of the challenge is that I'm also going to be attempting a 200 kilo back squat in the morning of the event.
Well, that's one of them.
Pardon?
What's one of them?
So a back squat with a bar that weighs 200 kilos.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, I'm with you now.
Yeah. So I'm gonna be
Gym lingo. Right over my head.
Yeah. Straight over your head. In terms of the performance side of things, the main goal is quite simply just to complete it, just to show people that no matter what you've got in terms of like medical conditions, injuries, previous injuries, whatever's going on, that just by sort of pure grit and determination, you can do these things. You know, I haven't given myself a lot of time to prepare for these. Normally people will train for a year before they even start their Ironman training, and I've just given myself 3.5 months. Because why not? You know, I like the mental side of it, and I think no way by October am I going to be physically ready for it, but I think mentally I'm already there. I think if I had to do it tomorrow, like mentally I'm strong enough to do it, which is sort of part of the reason why I'm doing it, is to show people that you should not let a condition stop you, because it'll be your head that will stop you before the condition will. So the goal is just to complete it. I'm really competitive, so I'm already setting myself times, which is just ridiculous because it's going to be a first. But yeah, the ultimate goal is just to complete it on the day.
And then in terms of what the training looks like, I mean, I see your Instagram stories and you sort of always seem to be running, cycling.
Doing something, yeah.
Yeah. And I think I saw a post of you, you were at the gym, and you had like a pile of like Mr. Kipling cakes next to you and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So this is really serious training. It must be like another full-time job on top of everything else that you do.
Yeah, it's intense. So my week basically starts off really intense. So Monday, Tuesday, I've got my main heavy lifting sessions and then some interval stuff. So I've got my sort of like my quicker runs, my quicker bike rides, where I'm essentially just trying to get my heart rate up real high, and find out some information in terms of like just improving that anaerobic base. And then as the week goes on, it's where I essentially accumulate all of my longer volume stuff. So it's where all my like longer distance swimming comes in, my longer distance riding, and then on Saturday is where I've got my big old meaty sessions, which are the bikes into runs or the full triathlons.
So in terms of your training before the Ironman challenge, did you do a lot of cardio, or was it pretty much weight training based?
I've always had a decent CV base just from playing rugby most of my life, but before I was just Olympic weightlifting and just sort of general strength training. So I've always fancied myself as like a semi decent runner. Like I could always go out and do a good 10k or a good 5k, but I've never actually trained for a half marathon. I've never done anything of any sort of any feat of fitness really. So it really is throwing myself in at the deep end.
I almost cried after my last. No, I did cry after my last half marathon. I had to have an operation on my foot, and it made my sort of running gait a bit weird, and I hadn't ever run that long. I just signed up to it and then just did it, and I realized sort of very sort of early on in the run that my knee wasn't, you know, the sort of motion wasn't right, and it was like really, really weird. So it was painful. I got through it, but towards the end I was like having I don't know, I was like having panic attacks because I thought that I couldn't get my breath, and I was like, oh, this is like the worst thing in the world.
When you hit that running wall, it is the worst. And how did you manage your diabetes on the day?
How did I do? I think I was still on finger prick tests, so I didn't have the Freestyle Libre yet, so I was finger prick testing. And to be honest, I sort of used it as a way to just stop and like, because if I wiggled my kneecap a little bit, it would make the running all right.
Diabetes break.
Yeah. So yeah, I maybe used it as a little get out of jail free card. But it was a half marathon in Swansea, and the start of the race is quite winding, and in that's, you know, it's quite easy to run a long distance when you're running through you know, sort of winding paths or changing scenery. But the final, like
straight
7 kilometers, it was straight along the beach, and just looking at that distance and thinking about my foot. And then towards the end, when I was like, and I couldn't get my breath, I think I've never had a panic attack, so I don't actually know if it was a panic attack. But how people describe panic attacks is what I thought that it was. But it was just,
just
I
hit that
didn't
wall.
run for a long time after that.
Yeah, I bet.
But also, running is something that I have sort of slipped back into because, I mean, day to day, I usually would be doing tons of just, just like residual, what do you call it? Just like general movement that would keep me at sort of a steady blood sugar level. But that's all gone now. So I would do, so I live in, this will mean nothing to most of the readers, are we a newspaper? This will mean nothing to most of the listeners, but I live in Portishead. You'll know Portishead, it's got a marina. So I just run out my house, run around the marina and then back. And that seems to just make it easier in the morning and just sort of sets me up.
Yeah, will do. But also what you'll find is that the effect of exercise as a diabetic affects your levels for the rest of the day, and that accumulation of exercise massively helps how your diabetes is controlled. So in terms of like insulin ratios, my ratios are pretty much all over the shop because, in the morning when I first wake up is when I'm most resistant. So it's when I need a little bit more because, I've come from a state of rest. My body isn't moving. The second I step foot out of the house, I'm pretty much non-stop for the rest of the day, which means that then my insulin ratio will come down a little bit. And then before sessions, I pretty much don't take any insulin for about an hour before. And then again, for about an hour to 2 hours afterwards, I pretty much don't need any insulin because my blood sugars are still just going to be coming down the whole time. So what you'll find is that in terms of, even if you're not going to be doing a lot of training, just in terms of general moving around, general sort of neat, general just sort of any elevation in heart rate, is that will massively affect your levels because that will sort of keep spinning even when you stop. Your blood sugars will still be playing catch up a little bit. And when you haven't got that, which is what you're saying in terms of the lockdown levels, is that they will be all over the shop because you haven't got that sort of base that you have every day when you're up and about, you're walking around, you're popping down to the shops, you're popping in and out of work. You haven't got that. So it's suddenly like, right, well, what are your actual levels like when you're just at complete rest and when there is nothing else to factor into it? And that's probably why my levels were a bit up and down at the start of lockdown, is because I was only leaving my house for 1 or 2 hours a day, which for me is like a tenth of what it is normally.
Yeah, it's a tough one to get out of too, because it's like the routine of everything's changed.
Yeah, for sure.
I've never been so much of a home person, but like now it's just where I am now. I was just sort of retreating into my cave, but now it's the time to sort of get back going and get moving. We're going to take a short break now, but before that, I just want to let people listening and watching along at home that there are some new videos that are regularly appearing on my YouTube channel. Jack's already been in one of them. I do sort of a sort of monthly Type 1 diabetic news update where I talk about recent developments in tech, treatments, research, and people doing cool things for the Type 1 diabetes community. So head over to my YouTube channel. There's 3 of them on there so far, more on the way, so do check them out. My YouTube channel is Jamie Lowe TV, youtube.com/Jamie Lowe TV. But me and Jack will be back after this short break. Hello everyone and welcome back to the All for One podcast. Just before the break, I told you about those Type 1 diabetes news update videos on my YouTube channel. If you haven't checked them out yet, please do. They are very, very short. What I really wanted to do was, I find it really boring keeping up to date with all the latest research and all the latest developments in tech. Because it's generally all in a blog or a news article, something like that, which I don't like to spend too much of my time reading. So what I've done is I've tried to take the best bits of those articles and blogs, compile them into a really, really short video, max 5-7 minutes length, and it's a really, really easy way to get a good idea of what's going in the Type 1 world. So head over to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Jamie Lowe TV, which if you're watching this podcast, you'll already be on. So it'll just be a couple of videos down from this one, but they are over there. So I'd love it if you would check those out. But we are joined today on the podcast by Jack Anderson, who's a personal trainer from Bristol. We were talking just a bit before the break about how important exercise is and how it can help us all sort of deal with our lockdown levels. But I'm going to need you to be a personal trainer now, Jack, and get me out of my pit, get me out of this rut that I'm in, because I was on it. I was cooking every day. I was, counting carbs. I had, several meals a day, but now I eat sparsely. I seem to have started to get all floppy and flabby, and I'm just not exercising. What's the solution here?
So I think the biggest thing that people are finding at the minute is that because they're returning everything back into everyday life, they've always got this idea in their head of, I'll do this tomorrow. I'll do this tomorrow. And I'm sort of a believer that tomorrow doesn't exist. You have to live in the present. And if you want to sort something out, you've got to do it now. So my thing for you is that the second that we hit the end button, I want you to plan your food diary for the rest of the week. So whether that's just planning breakfast, lunch and dinner for the rest of the week, and then at least you can just tick that box, and then if that's just you looking after your nutrition, then that's just done. Okay, so don't be like, I'll sleep on it, I'll do it tomorrow morning. It's like, no, we're going to do it in the present, we're going to do it now. Okay, from there, I don't mind what it is. I just want you to generalize exercise as a box. Okay, and this doesn't have to be long. It can be anywhere from half an hour to, I don't know, let's say an hour and a half to start. Okay, and you need to tick this box every day. I don't care if it's a jog around the marina, if it's a HIIT workout, if it's a live F45 class, if you drag yourself to the gym for the first time. I just want you to tick that one box. That's it. It could be a walk. It could be anything that, if you can justify it as exercise, as long as it's not like pool or snooker or something like that, we can work with it. Okay.
Darts. So
whatever it is, and this is where actually it will be easier for you, is because you're not saying. This is the biggest issue, is that
it doesn't have to be a half marathon. It could be anything, and then the sort of mental barriers start to disappear.
It can be a walk to the shops. It's getting yourself out of the habit of seeing the gym or a run or whatever as the only way of exercising. Go for a walk around your local park. That is exercise. Do a short workout in your living room. That's exercise. Just because you haven't taken yourself to a gym, so many people have been like, oh, I feel crap, I haven't been to the gym this week. It's like, if your goal isn't to get stronger or to get better at one thing inside the gym, and you can do it outside of the gym, then don't go to the gym. The gym is a place where it's convenient, and for most it is convenient, but for a lot of people, like, outside is convenient, your own home is convenient. So make it work where you can do it. So don't see the gym as this place that you have to go to. It's something that you can use. It's a good resource, but just have a goal for exercise. Your exercise is the goal, and just tick that box every day. Even if it's just you get up and move that one day.
Do you know what
I think?
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's always the simplest solutions to these problems that these problems that everyone has. But I guess that's sort of maybe 40 to 50% of your job as a personal trainer is to change people's, the sort of mental maths when they look at food, when they look at exercise, because you're unpicking years and years and years of us sort of conditioning
of habits.
Of conditioning ourselves.
The biggest part of my job is it's not actually personal training, in terms of like a very small portion of my job is actually coaching people through exercise. A lot of it is quite simply just talking and trying to address issues that people have in their sort of fitness journey and think about ways of combating it. And for every one person, it's going to be a different solution. Of course, there's generalized categories. If you're trying to lose weight, it's going to be pretty much like general. And if you're trying to gain muscle, again, it's going to be pretty much general. But it's mainly just these sort of habits. And for a lot of people, it's just time management and sort of like existing habits. So some people don't want to exercise at certain times because they have to do this one thing. And it's like, well, how can we compromise? How can we find a balance of the two, where you're being kind to the side of you that wants to sit and watch Netflix, that wants to go out and eat at restaurants, that wants to go and do this, that, whatever. And how can we be kind to your body, which in turn is actually going to make all these things more enjoyable. And this is the thing, is that a lot of people, unfortunately, don't see the beauty in exercise, and don't see, like, although millions and millions and millions of people do, there are still so many people that don't enjoy exercise. So it's then also trying to create exercise as something that then people enjoy, because when you enjoy it, you're going to want to do it. And when you don't enjoy it, you're not going to want to do it.
And I mean, finally, I think we've seen in the news over the last couple of weeks that finally exercise is actually being prescribed by doctors. People are getting prescribed bikes to help them get a bit fitter, because, you know, as we approach the colder months and we get this second wave that everyone's predicting, it's your exercise that, as well as supplements and as well as good nutrition, that is a massive part of building up the strength in your body and your immune system. And if you've got type 1 diabetes, then your type 1 diabetes will be better because you're exercising. And if you're like me, you're desperate to put on muscle in the right places. That's only going to happen when your blood sugar is doing what it should do. And I guess that's a struggle that, you know, other people don't have to deal with. But do you know anything about, like, the science of that? Is like why your body doesn't necessarily help you build muscle if your levels aren't, you know, well managed?
So I personally haven't actually had the issue of that. I've been quite I've been quite fortunate, but I think that's just because I live in that sort of realm where you know, I've been strength training since I was 13. So I've been doing it for a while now. I've always understood nutrition enough that it hasn't got in the way. For sure, your body's going to be combating loads of different things. And being diabetic, obviously, if your body is having to deal with high blood sugar levels, essentially like protein synthesis, which is where your body and your kidney and your liver is going to be processing protein to help it build your muscle. And that's the sort of factory where that happens. If your kidney and your liver is then having to regulate your blood sugar levels, it's then going to affect that process of protein synthesis, which means that will then be affected.
And also DKA, that wastes muscle, doesn't it? So anything that you do build, if you have a prolonged hyper, then you're effectively, like, you know, saying goodbye to muscles as they're broken down by your body.
That's one of the horrible things about diabetes, is that people lose limbs, people lose their eyesight. It's an awful condition if it's not managed well. And that's why that's why having exercise as something in your day-to-day life, that you have something that you need to be able to perform well for, is so important. Like, for me, if my diabetes is bad, it pretty much messes up my whole day. I can't train, I can't sleep, I can't do this, I can't do that. And it's only because I am so active that I notice it so much. If I was, you know, bedbound, or let's say stuck inside all day, and my levels were a little bit high, I might not necessarily notice it. But because I run most days, or I cycle most days, or I go to the gym most days, if my levels are high, I feel it straight away. If my levels are low, I feel it straight away. And it has that immediate impact, which if you're sort of fairly sedentary, it won't. Which is why it's so important to just move. It's important for every single person to move. You know, like, the human body was never made sat behind a desk. Like, you take it back to our ancestors, they were running around, climbing up things. They were, you know, they were hunters, and they were gatherers. They weren't 9-to-5ers. Like, that's the sort of issue that people have now, is that people don't move and they consume more. Whereas you look at it previously, obviously people were moving around tons and they were eating less. And that's why when you look back through, like, history, you won't find a fat person from, like, the caveman era, because they just weren't living that life. The foods that they were eating were whole, they were moving, and that was their life. It was simple. And now everybody's got it in their head that to get into a shape like that it's something else, that it's a keto diet, that it's an intermittent fasting diet, that it's not. It's a simple thing of move more and eat less, and that's going to get you in shape. Like, not obviously eating less as long as it fits your requirements, but that's the science. It's really that simple. And people don't want to believe it, so they're like, maybe if I go on Slimming World or Weight Watchers, this will help. And maybe
I think it's almost like you're sort of passing off the responsibility to someone else. I mean, that was a big thing with me in the gym. That's why I didn't necessarily sort of gel well to the gym. I sort of needed someone at every stage to be telling me what to do. So that's why sort of exercise classes and F45 was a good fit to me. But essentially, it is that simple. But you do, I think it's quite comfortable to... Maybe that's maybe that's the position that I'm in right now. I'm like, because I can't, I'm not going back to F45 right now. That's why it's become sort of this like comfortable spot where I'm wearing really baggy clothes, where, I'm, eating sort of what I want when I want. And, because I'm home all the time. I never used to be home to have 3 meals a day. But now I am, and I've got all the time in the world to cook breakfast and all that sort of stuff. So
that's
all part of it.
Actually, like if I'm giving you advice personally, you're actually in a better position. So the issue that a lot of people have is that convenient food is never good food. So I've done my stints of working in supermarkets, and you go in there for lunch, you go in there for dinner, and you pick up what's easy. You pick up what you can cook in 5 minutes. You pick up what you can eat straight away. Good food doesn't normally come like that, Like you can't make a good meal by really putting it in the microwave unless you're heating up something that you've made previously. Like there's only so many things that you can, without it being really expensive, because good food normally does cost a little bit more. So the con of being at home is that food is more available, and your fridge is a lot closer, and the cupboards with the snacks are a lot closer. Netflix is closer, and they go hand in hand, which is an issue. But then also the beauty of it is that you've got that freedom to control what you eat more, where you're not rushing around as much, where you have the time to cook more whole foods, make better meals, and also spend more time planning and putting good food in your body. You've got that time, so make the most of it. And that's why I want you to make that meal planner for the rest of the week. As soon as you know what you're eating, then it's not an issue. It's when you don't plan your meals and you think, well, what am I going to have? I'm going to have what's convenient. And then when what's convenient ends up being a ready meal or a pizza or something else, it's not that those are bad foods, but it's just they're not always the most sensible choice. Whereas if you forward plan, you're like, right, this is what I'm having then, this is what I'm having then, this is what I'm having then. It keeps you on track. And when you plan like this, you can then also plan in when you're going to treat yourself with food. You can then also plan in when you're going to go to a restaurant. You think, well, you know what, I'm going to stick to my calories for today because I know that I'm going out for a meal tomorrow night. Rather than it be like, right, well, I'm just going to sort of guess here. I'm going to have this because it's easy. I'm going to have this. I'll go out and then get to the end of the week and think, I've had a bad week of eating. Why have I gained a load of weight? And it's like, well, just controlling it, being aware of what's going in and what's going out is the biggest thing.
And then just finally, I wanted to touch on sort of the reasons why you're now becoming so vocal about getting moving, getting people to take their diabetes seriously, and you sort of setting yourself such a challenge because you mentioned you're competitive, you want to prove that you can do it, but I think you also want to prove to everyone else that it's possible.
So there's a few reasons. I remember when I was 15 and being diagnosed, and the first thing that came apparent in sort of like in terms of the way that all the nurses and doctors were speaking to me is that like this was going to be a condition that was going to sort of like put a full stop on whatever I wanted to do in terms of like fitness. Like whenever I was talking about training in the gym, playing rugby, to the doctors and whatever, they were like, oh, it's it's not a good idea, blah 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 blah. And at the time, I was having none of it. I was like, and I've always had a bit of an issue against sort of like following rules, so say. But I was like, I'm never going to let diabetes get in the way. And it was at the sort of thing where I wasn't even telling my rugby coaches that I had it because I didn't want them to know.
Right.
Because I didn't want them to think any differently of it. And I was like, I'm just going to suffer in silence with this condition and act as if I don't have it. But then I was like, well, I don't want everybody else that is in my position, because there are active diabetics. There are so many active diabetics. You're an active diabetic. I would hate for somebody to be I would hate for somebody to be diagnosed with diabetes right now and think that it's the end of the line and think that they can't go on and achieve great things. And I had nurses that said that I would never be able to do whatever. And for me, it's just like no, I am going to do it, and I'm going to show everybody else that is diabetic that you can also do it. And just since like coming out and speaking about my diabetes, I had probably about 50 odd messages of people telling me that they were diabetic or that they knew someone that was diabetic, and they just had no idea. And I was just like, why haven't we had this conversation? Like, I've been friends with you for like 5 years, and we've never spoken about the fact that we both have this condition. And this is just like absurd to me. And I was like, I don't want anybody to see diabetes as a shut door in terms of what they can achieve. And that's why I'm doing it, is for every single person with type 1 diabetes that has ever for 1 second thought that they can't achieve something. That's why I'm doing it. And every time it gets hard, that's all I'm thinking about. I'm just thinking about if someone else gets diagnosed, if say a young person gets diagnosed and they felt how I did at the start, that's who I'm doing it for, to show them that you can do it. So that's me. That is me and what I'm doing.
And I think, you know, even if I'm really selfish about it, like this chat at this point in time is exactly what I needed to hear, and hopefully what a lot of other people needed to hear too. So as we do sort of poke our heads out of lockdown, we can get back to, you know, putting our health first, because it's more important than ever right now. And if you, Jack, can do an Ironman challenge, I can plan my meals for the week, and I can go for a run or walk or do a class.
That's what I mean. It's not. I'm not doing it because I think everybody with diabetes needs to go and do an Ironman. I'm doing it to show you that you can do a big thing. You know, like I'm biting off what I can chew right now. I have plans in the future to bite off a hell of a lot more. And I just think, you know what, even if me doing this Ironman convinces you to go and walk around your park, to run around your park, to run your first 10K, to go and swim somewhere, to go and cycle up a hill, if it inspires you to do that, then that's, even if it gets you to think about it, that's my job done.
Well, we'd love to hear if Jack's managed to inspire you to get moving. Do let us know on the socials. We are at All For One Tweets on Twitter. We are at All For One Insta on Instagram. We are at All For One Online on Facebook. And you can always email, as always, contact allfor1@gmail.com. And as the TV shows, it's the number 4, but the rest of them are letters. So watch out for that one. But that is the end of today's episode. Thank you, Jack, for being on the show and giving us all a much needed pep talk. You've got lots more training to do. So it's going to be quite a grueling schedule for you until you take on the challenge. But when is it?
18th of October.
18th of October. Fantastic.
And I have a Gofundme page. If you type in Diabetic Iron Man or head to my Instagram or Facebook, you'll see it in the bio. Anything helps.
And you're raising money for Diabetes UK, aren't you?
Raising money for all of it is going to Diabetes UK. We're already up over £1,000.
Amazing.
Which is brilliant, yeah.
Well, I'm sure we'll chat more about it and drop in on you and see how you're getting on. But thank you so much for being on today's episode. Thank you to you at home for listening or watching along. If you didn't already know, these podcasts now get posted in full video form, full colour, widescreen HD video on my YouTube channel, Jamie Lowe TV, youtube.com/Jamie Lowe TV. So if you want to watch it there, then do check it out. I've already shouted out the socials, but if you wanted to follow me, I'm at Jamie Lowe TV everywhere, and Jack is at JackPT UK. Is that everywhere too? Insta?
Yeah, that's it, everywhere.
Cool. All right, we'll go follow all of them, and we'll see you here next time for another episode of the All For One podcast. But that's all from us for now. Goodbye.